What up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith. Welcome back to the Nerdy Narrative. Today's video is going to be my February monthly wrap-up, all of the things that I read in February. I will quickly summarize, tell you how I felt about it in case you wanted to read something I mentioned and you forgot about it. Here's your reminder to add it to your TBR. We're going to start with Joan Didion, The Seacoast of Despair. I was not impressed. That's kind of Joan's work for me. I either really love it and resonate with it, or I'm like, I don't get it. Went over my head. The first book that I read in February was a hit, The Patient by Jasper DeWitt. This was my patron pick of the month and just knocked it out of the park. I think this might be my favorite thriller that I've read in years. Absolutely loved it. It checked all of my boxes. I would call this one a supernatural thriller, but the kind that I cannot go into it. It's a short book. It's a very small time commitment. I would recommend the audiobook. The audiobook was just on point as far as the ambiance of the story. The format of it, the way that it's written, is in a series of posts on a forum. Someone is posting anonymously a story of a patient they encountered at a psychiatric hospital they worked at. If you get nothing else out of this video, but you read The Patient by Jasper DeWitt, I will consider this a win. Next up, I reread Full Moon by Jim Butcher, and funnily enough on this reread, I like Stormfront better than Full Moon. Typically, I've always liked Full Moon better, but there was just something different about it this time. It felt like the character relationships just weren't as good in this one as it was in the first one. I still enjoyed it. I'm having a blast rereading Dresden, which I then read the short story Out of Briefcases, B is for Bigfoot. I then followed that up with the graphic novel Ghoul Goblin. B is for Bigfoot, I really enjoyed because what happened in that story I hear about later in the books, and I was always curious as to what happened there, so I finally got the answers to that. Ghoul Goblin. The artist does an amazing job visually depicting the characters so well, so well. The story was a good story, but it doesn't tie into anything. It could have been just written as a completely different something or other. The only tie-in is that Harry's in it. I also had the pleasure of reading the arc for The Judas Blossom by Stephen Aryan. That's the first book in the new Persian-inspired fantasy by Stephen Aryan. The first book comes out July 11th. It was incredible. It was exhilarating. I enjoyed it so much that once I finished it, I went for a history lesson on Wiki to learn all about the Mongol Empire and just their cancerous spread over Asia. I love when books that talk about factual historical events make me want to go and learn more. Not only did I want to learn more about the Mongol Empire, I wanted to learn more about Persia itself, the culture. I love this book. Y'all are definitely gonna want to go ahead and get those pre-orders in. The cover is gorgeous. I mean, it's one of those that you would just buy to have on your shelf because it is pretty. I then read Don't Fear the Reaper by Stephen Graham Jones. This is the second book in the Lake Witch trilogy. It was a completely different experience from the first book. What I told myself was, after what happened in the first one, when you are a final girl and you survive the events that happened in the first book, you are going to be a changed person. That's going to have an impact. And we see that impact on our main character in this one. And I have to read the last line again since I have it in my hands. It's such a killer last line. Oh my gosh. I would love to have a movie series or a Netflix series come from the Lake Witch trilogy. And then next, I listened to the audiobook Love Will Tear Us Apart by C.K. McDonald. I buddy read this with my friend Gail, and we just had the best time. Anything by this author, I already know I'm going to enjoy. It is the third book in the Stranger Times series. Anything I say about it ties into the first two books. I'm just going to encourage you to read the series. It's a paranormal thriller series. It's about the staff of the Stranger Times, which is a newspaper that reports on all the weird stuff that happens. It's quite hilarious. Honestly, could call it a paranormal thriller / urban fantasy series. It is amazing. I will put in the cards the first book in the series review so you can check that out and see if it's one you want to pick up. I would definitely recommend the audiobooks for this because Brendan McDonald, he is a god among audiobook narrators, just amazing. And then I also finished Tell My Horse by Zora Neale Hurston. This is a nonfiction personal account of her time spent in Haiti and Jamaica as she is studying voodoo and all of the mysterious practices and rituals and things that go along with it. It is wonderful. Highly recommend it if you like nonfiction, if you like anthropological works, if you're interested in voodoo. I believe this is the most in-depth information I have ever read about voodoo, and I've read a lot. I have always been fascinated by voodoo. I used to go to New Orleans all the time and would study anything I could. I would go on tours. I would go to the different shops and talk to people. That's so good. Next up here, I read The Way of Unity by Sarah K. Balstrup. By the time this video goes up, my review that was part of the Escapist book tour stop for this one will be up, so you can check that out. I won't get into too much detail, but this was an amazing story. If you take a look at history, there's been a lot of calls for conflicts when it comes to religion. But we see in this world of Velspar, the 7 lands of Velspar, what happens when the ruling families of this land decide that the holy ones, the intercessors, who is a psychic priesthood, they've overstepped. They decide to eradicate them. And what happens to all of the people and their belief system. But like I said, I've done a full review for this one. I will link that for you to check out. What else did I read? Ooh, The Great Hunt. I'm gonna have to keep up with my ranking system. I'm not gonna do a tier ranking. I don't like tier ranking videos, but I might do a video where I just talk about my favorites of the series and why. This one may be the #1 favorite of the series. It's the one where I fell in love with the series as a whole. The first book, I really liked the characters and the concept. I've always been a huge fan of the quest trope. This one really got more of a cohesive feel. I feel like The Eye of the World is a bit of a mess. This one, man, this world just opens up. We're learning more about the prophecies that surround the Dragon Reborn. We're learning a little more about the magic system. We're introduced to even more magical things that have been tainted by the male half of the magic system. It's one of those that the ending is so good that you feel like you've either just finished running a marathon and all those endorphins are hitting you, or you feel like you could go run a marathon. So needless to say, The Wheel of Time reread is going very well. And then right on the heels of finishing that one, I read Richard Osman's The Thursday Murder Club. I am going to find a way to read the other 2 in this series that are out. The 4th one comes out in September. This book was an absolute utter delight. It's just a fantastic read. I wasn't expecting all of the heartwarming moments. I wasn't expecting it to make me cry, to make me feel better about getting older and the fact that when you're 70, 80, life isn't over, and just have fun. I would put this one in the same category as earlier when I was talking about the Stranger Times. Just amazing. Except this one is more of just a crime thriller. There's no supernatural elements involved. And we have a group of retired individuals who are the Thursday Murder Club that are going around solving crime and just using their age and their cuteness to manipulate people. So funny. And then I plowed through the 3rd book of Joseph Sells' Book of Thrice Dead series, Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Favorite book I've ever read by Joseph Sells. Can't really get into it too much because it is the 3rd book in the series. This is the one where all of the paths are starting to converge. I think book 4 is really going to see some melding of the different stories and people we've met along the way. I also finished The Bitter Twins by Jen Williams, 2nd book in the Winnowing Flame trilogy. The second half came back and saved this book. Now, I thought about 40% of the way in, I'm like, oh my gosh, middle book syndrome. It's just a whole bunch of setup. It's just literally a bridge from book 1 to book 3. And then Jen Williams just really cut loose in the second half and just made my head spin. And what all has taken place and developed in this story, you know, it continues to be a top favorite as far as the blending of science fiction and fantasy. Just absolutely loved it. The final thing that I finished reading in February is the anthology American Cannibal, edited by Rebecca Rowland. I have never cared to read anything involving cannibalism. I've never sought that out as a subject matter. That was the theme for this anthology. And when you have an all-star cast of 20 authors submitting stories for this collection, it's kind of impossible not to like it. It's very well written. It's historical fiction, so all of these stories take place in the past. The central theme, of course, is cannibalism. There are 20 different approaches to cannibalism, and it was just as much of a joy as finding out how that author was going to incorporate it in their story, just as reading it itself. Just a fantastic read. Would absolutely recommend, and the cover is just, this may be my favorite anthology cover I have ever seen. It's definitely the favorite one I own. And I do believe that will take care of all the things that I read during the month of January. I read over 5,000 pages. Absolutely loved everything. I don't think, looking through here, there was anything that I did not absolutely love. I mean, I'm talking a whole bunch of just top tier reads. I mean, the Joan Didion story was a miss for me this month, but that's just a short story. But everything else, I think I really, really enjoyed. So no wonder I read over 5,000 pages. I don't normally read that much in a month, especially a short month, as short as February was. I'm kind of shocked at myself. But the truth of the matter is, everything was so good that I didn't have trouble sitting down to concentrate. Sometimes my brain just gets so busy and I have trouble calming it down to read, and that was just not the case. I looked forward to every day when I was picking up these books. So I hope that I talked about one here today that interests you. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.